After 10, and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Let me just read you one paragraph, one sentence even, from the Sunday Times yesterday, who have been working with Channel 4's Dispatches programme on an investigation into what they call the Duchy Files. It's just, I mean, it is truly extraordinary. Over 5 months, we identified 5,410 landholdings, mineral rights and properties held by the Duchy of Lancaster on behalf of the King and the Duchy of Cornwall for the Prince, and then examined business agreements and leases linked to these plots. I've lost the room, right? That's quite dull. Sounds a bit dry. What's he doing? Just listen to this sentence. These contracts show the duchies generate profits by charging the army, the navy, hospitals, the prison service, schools and councils for the right to use lands, rivers and seashores seized for the duchies in medieval times. I have absolutely no idea what the phone-in is going to be today, but I felt that this was a story of such remarkable relevance to so much that we talk about together that it would be profoundly remiss of me not to discuss it today. These contracts show the duchies generate profits by charging the army, the navy, hospitals, the prison service, schools and councils for the right to use lands, rivers and seashores seized for the duchies in medieval times. The Duchy of Lancaster raised, wait for it, £27.4 million for the King last year alone, while the Duchy of Cornwall raised a cool 23.6 for his oldest son. And this allows them to pay for their private homes, their personal income and their staff. The annual declaration includes only very, very basic details of assets and activities in annual reports. I'll give you an example. Duchy of Lancaster has a deal with Guy's and St Thomas's NHS Trust in London that will charge the NHS. Think about the budget and the importance of raising more money for the NHS. The Duchy of Lancaster, as in the King's side hustle, will charge the NHS £11 million over the next 15 years for the right to park ambulances in one of its warehouses. The Duchy of Cornwall, which is Prince William's side hustle, receives rent for Dartmoor Prison in a contract under which the Ministry of Justice will pay £37 million. The reason I say I don't know, and people are telling me not to forget the RNLI, I might allow a caller to bring that particular element of the story to our attention, because it's one of those stories that is almost impossible to get a proper grip on. The royal family are sold to us as paragons of patriotism, right? They are the very pinnacle of national pride. You cannot criticise the royal family without running a risk of being treasonous or being accused of treachery. So I don't know how naive it is to therefore presume that they would do more than everybody else to uphold the sort of values and indeed institutions that we consider to be crucial to our national infrastructure. I don't know off the top of your head what sort of institutions you'd put in that category. How about the army, the navy, hospitals, the prison service, schools and councils? You see, this is probably the best way to convey the size of the story. So I read out those things and you see people and you see organisations that are dedicated to the public good, right? The army, the navy, hospitals.
In today's society, it's hard to ignore the glaring wealth inequality that exists. Recently, this issue was thrust into the spotlight when broadcaster James O'Brien made a controversial claim. He suggested that the monarchy, specifically King Charles and Prince William, were exploiting public funds. It's no secret that they profit handsomely from the Duchy of Lancaster and Duchy of Cornwall, respectively. If this is true, it raises serious questions about fairness and accountability. Let's delve into the financials of the monarchy, starting with the sovereign grant. So, what exactly is the sovereign grant? It's essentially an annual payment made to the monarchy by the government that covers the official expenses of the Queen, or in this case, King Charles. It's a hefty sum funded by you, the taxpayers. The sovereign grant is quite substantial, to say the least. It's calculated as a percentage of the profits from the Crown estate, a portfolio of properties owned by the monarchy. The exact figure varies from year to year, but let's say it's in the ballpark of several tens of millions of pounds. Now, this might not sound like a lot in the grand scheme of things, but let's put it into perspective. Imagine if this money was spent on public services instead. How many nurses could be employed? How many school buildings could be renovated? How many meals could be provided to those in need? And while the monarchy is raking in this amount, there are public sectors that are desperately underfunded. The National Health Service, for example, is struggling with a lack of resources and staff. Schools across the country are facing budget cuts. And let's not forget about the many people who are finding it difficult to afford basic necessities like food and housing. The sovereign grant isn't the only source of income for the monarchy either. There's also the Duchy of Lancaster and the Duchy of Cornwall, which we'll get into shortly. So, while certain public sectors are struggling, the monarchy is receiving a substantial sum from the sovereign grant. It's a stark contrast, isn't it? And it raises some serious questions about fairness and priorities. Where is the money really needed? And who should be the ones to decide how it's spent? It's a complex issue, and there's a lot more to discuss. So stay tuned as we continue to delve into the financials of the monarchy and the controversies surrounding them. Beyond the sovereign grant, there's more money funneling into the monarchy. We're talking about the Duchy of Lancaster and the Duchy of Cornwall, two entities that add a significant amount to the coffers of King Charles and Prince William, respectively. The Duchy of Lancaster, a portfolio of land, properties and assets held in trust for the reigning monarch, is a significant source of income for King Charles. This isn't a small fund, it's a vast estate worth billions. It's a treasure trove of castles, farmland, commercial properties, and even some historical artefacts. Every year it generates millions in income, all of which goes directly to the king, tax-free. Over in the southwest, Prince William reaps the benefits of the Duchy of Cornwall. Similar to the Duchy of Lancaster, it's a collection of land, properties and assets. But the Duchy of Cornwall is specifically for the reigning monarch's eldest son. And just like his father, Prince William enjoys the fruits of this duchy, again, largely untaxed. These duchies, steeped in history and tradition, may seem like harmless remnants of a bygone era, but when you look at the numbers, it's clear they're more than just symbolic. They're powerful financial tools that allow the monarchy to accumulate significant wealth, mostly unburdened by the tax obligations that everyday citizens face. This isn't just about King Charles and Prince William personally profiting. It's about a system that allows such vast wealth to go largely untaxed. While the country grapples with underfunded public services, it's about the discrepancy between the royal privilege and the reality of everyday people. It raises questions about fairness, about accountability, and about how the monarchy fits into a modern democratic society. This wealth, largely untaxed, adds another layer to the controversy. As we peel back the layers of royal finance, it becomes clear that the issue is complex and deeply rooted in tradition and law. But as society changes, the question remains, should these traditions continue unchallenged? The press plays a significant role in shaping public perception. Now, let's turn our attention to how the press covers the royal family, or more precisely, how they choose to cover certain members over others. Imagine this scenario. Prince William, despite benefiting from £1 billion estate he didn't earn, is consistently painted in the media as the responsible future king. He can take money from questionable sources and elude scrutiny over his spending habits. Yet the press remains largely silent, choosing instead to focus on his charitable endeavours and duties as a royal. On the other hand, we have Prince Harry, who chose to leave this system that is riddled with inequality and exploitation. He has decided to carve his own path and pay his own way. Yet, the press relentlessly criticises him, scrutinises his every move, and questions his motives. The question we must ask ourselves is why? Why is one prince who profits from a system that takes from the many to give to the few portrayed as responsible and dutiful? Why is another prince who chose to leave this system and forge his own self-sustaining path painted as reckless and selfish? The answer lies in the inherent bias of the press. The media often chooses to uphold the status quo, to protect those in power, and to vilify those who challenge this power. This is not just about Prince William and Prince Harry. This is about the media's role in perpetuating systemic inequality and protecting those who benefit from it. So while the press continues to shape our perception of these royal figures, let's not forget to question, to scrutinise and to demand transparency. Let's not let the media dictate our understanding of fairness and justice. The disparity in media coverage adds another dimension to this complex issue. As we delve deeper into this topic, let's keep in mind the power of the press and its role in shaping narratives that often serve the interests of those in power. While this wealth accumulation continues, the UK is facing a cost of living crisis. Let's take a moment to understand the gravity of this situation. Every day, millions of people across the UK are grappling with the rising cost of living. Inflation is soaring, with the price of food, fuel and housing reaching unprecedented levels. At the same time, public services that should serve as a safety net are woefully underfunded. The National Health Service, the backbone of the country's healthcare, is stretched thin, with staff shortages and budget cuts affecting its ability to provide quality care. Schools, too, are feeling the pinch, with many struggling to provide adequate resources for their students. Meanwhile, the cost of basic necessities like heating, groceries and transportation continues to climb. For many families, these increases are not just inconvenient, they are life-altering. Parents are having to make impossible choices like whether to heat their homes or put food on the table. And while all this is happening, the monarchy continues to amass wealth, seemingly oblivious to the plight of the people. The Duchy of Lancaster and the Duchy of Cornwall, which provide income for King Charles and Prince William respectively, are worth billions. Yet they pay a fraction of the taxes that ordinary citizens do. The contrast is stark and hard to ignore. On one hand, we have a monarchy that is thriving, living in luxury, and benefiting from a system that allows them to accumulate wealth with little to no scrutiny. On the other hand, we have a public that is struggling, a public that is bearing the brunt of economic hardship while also funding the lavish lifestyles of the monarchy through their taxes. It's a stark reality that raises serious questions about equality, fairness, and the role of the monarchy in today's society. As the gap between the monarchy and the public widens, the question of fairness becomes even more pressing. So, where does this leave us? It leaves us with a question, a challenge, and an opportunity. The question is simple. Should King Charles and Prince William be held accountable for their actions? Should they be expected to bear the same responsibilities and obligations as any other citizen? The challenge is a bit more complex. It's about confronting the uncomfortable truth of a system that allows a few to benefit disproportionately at the expense of many. It's about daring to question the status quo and demanding transparency, fairness, and justice. But then comes the opportunity to spark a conversation, to contribute to a dialogue that could potentially lead to change. It's an opportunity for you, dear viewer, to make your voice heard. Don't just sit back and accept the narrative that's been handed to you. Challenge it, question it, probe it, and if it doesn't hold up, speak out. If you agree that it's time to hold Charles and William accountable, then like this video and share it with others. Let's get this conversation going. And if you want to stay informed and continue questioning the narrative, then subscribe to the channel. There's power in knowledge and there's strength in numbers. Together, we can make a difference. Remember, staying informed and questioning the narrative is the first step towards change.